Let's talk about Babel. Though before we do that, I'd like to explain my thoughts in making this video. Arknights is a game I have stuck with for just over a year now, and throughout it I have noticed a ton of dedication and passion behind its design. Beyond just the writing, I think Babel is the perfect example of the love and care put into the game. What I specifically want to highlight today is how the aesthetics and design of Babel help immerse the player into the story it is telling. From the phenomenal soundtrack to the gorgeous art design, Hyperglyph sets the tone for the kind of story they want to tell within seconds of opening up the event, by drip feeding us visual storytelling and flavor text that help us build upon the actual content. Yet most importantly, they establish the importance of fate, not as some kind of mystical power that controls your life, but rather as a glass prison made of our own shortcomings as people, one that holds us back from taking steps towards a better tomorrow. This video will contain spoilers, so if you haven't already read Babel, I do recommend that you go and do that. So how does the game's design benefit its story? The story of Babel begins where Teresa's life ends, in tragedy. She's a mythological, ethereal figure, the past king of the Sarkaz, the founder of Babel, the one whose ideals formed the bedrock of Emir's resolve, and the one who allowed Kazdel to hope once more. Yet, Teresa has always been defined by one immutable fact: she is dead, and it is by the Doctor's hand. That's all that mattered about Teresa, at least before Babel released on Arknights Global at the end of October 2024. The menu of Babel, featuring an illustration of all the key players within the narrative, does an excellent job of not only setting the tone, but foreshadowing key thematic elements of the story. The King's calls to arms reminds us of the period of Kazdel's history being riddled with a civil war, and the motorized logistical camp, the item shop for this event, offers raw sugar lumps as its currency. The description for this item describes it as a hard currency. It also has a field ration, and perhaps even a rare nicety for the soldiers of Kazdel. The fact that the Sarkaz have to rely on bartering of goods paints the image of their ruined economy, and the lack of a standardized currency makes not only living in Kazdel difficult, but also complicates international trade relationships. The timeline at the bottom of the artwork, while showing us the years that the story will be following, also offers a time frame for most of the important years of Teresa's life, and the most recent years of turmoil that Kazdel has faced. The year 1094, followed by red, shows the end of that timeline, but also stands above the stages, "You the future take my gifts," which implies the inheriting and passing on of Teresa's ideals, her gifts to those she trusts the most, the future, represented by Armia. Simultaneously, "You the past, ward me firmly," stands near the beginning of the timeline, and also where Teresa and Teresa's are located. They are the past, and whilst Teresa tries to embrace change, as shown by her facing towards the future and her friends, Teresa's instead stands with his back turned, perpetuating the cycle of hatred and violence whilst also looking towards the past and allowing it to shackle him from any progress that his sister wishes to make. The two are juxtaposed even further by their positions within the image. Teresa is diminished in size before her brother, and stands at the point of impact which shattered the glass which frames the image. Kazdel and the Sarkaz who rally behind the military commission have made their choice. Teresa stands tall, whilst Teresa is shattered. The shattering is but one among many. However, after all, this is the event that us, as the Doctor, will betray Teresa, and shatter the hopes of those united under her. At the center stands Ascalon and Manfred, both of whom are smaller mirrors of their mentors. Manfred faces his back towards Ascalon, much how Teresa faces away from Teresa. Yet, he faces in the direction of the future, perhaps implying that he truly believes Teresa and his methods will secure a better tomorrow for Kazdel and the Sarkaz. On the other hand, Ascalon remains alone and isolated, away from her mentor and away from Babel. Though she ultimately sides with Teresa even after her death, her journey of self-discovery leaves her at the center. She is told to come to her own conclusions and make her own choices. She stands in front of the glass, having not yet decided her place in the future. Above them both is a logo of Babel, its fragments peeling towards Kazdel, Armia, and the Doctor, revealing the logo of Rhodes Island beneath it. These fragments float away from Teresa. They are her hopes and ambitions, her gifts being passed on to the members of Rhodes. As her dream slowly withers and crumbles, its embers are carried on to future generations. Melancholic and hopeful, the opening graphic both sets the stage for the themes of the event and foreshadows its inevitable outcome. Babel is not the first event to try to drip feed information to the player, nor is it the first UI in Arknights that is worth talking about. Illustrator Cusano presents a map of its city, expanding on locations and giving us small extra character interactions between completing stages and breeding story nodes. Marianelle's design instead presents itself as a tournament bracket, in line with the focus of the event that criticizes Kazimierz' modernization, resulting in a blind push for profits and spectacle, which results in the suffering of the infected and a loss of culture. If you wish to find the truth, you must play through the story and experience it, as a glance at the city, or in this case the event, offers you the perspective of an ordinary citizen. Paired with the exciting music, one can easily forget just how easily the voices of the oppressed can go unheard. Yet, my focus in this video is on Babel, purely because it left such a strong impression on me. The themes of the event, as those of the main story, focus on how the past, present, and future all affect one another. It is easy for the masses to become trapped in the past, especially when it forms the foundation of your present-day problems. Likewise, those stuck in the past, unable to give up the torch to the future generations, will inevitably lead to stagnation. Becoming stuck on the past and its misgivings, whether justified or not, perpetuates the cycle of hatred that keeps people trapped and nations stagnant. Babel is no different. Tiresias and his followers are doomed to repeat the cycle because they cling to the memory of Kazdel's downfall, ironically repeating the same mistakes that led to his destruction in the process. It's no coincidence that the main stages of the game appear at the end of the timeline on the main UI of Babel. Despite the stride towards the future beginning with the end of Tiresias' life, they are also the first stages we access. The first story node opens on the death of Teresa herself, though the exact circumstances of her death are not immediately explored. Nevertheless, this point of connection also spells the inevitability of her downfall, which makes up the core of the event. Teresa's death is unavoidable, no matter what actions we take, yet it is also her death that propels her dream forward. In a sense, much like Tiresias, Teresa is the past, so in a twisted way, her passing the torch was a necessity for the future that she envisioned. As the player progresses through the stages, they will start to see a pattern emerge. Each stage connects to form a heartbeat, another reminder that the king is on borrowed time. Yet the true cruelty of the event is how much it initially detaches you from the fate it establishes. During the heights of the heartbeat, the Doctor travels terror, and the upbeat interactions almost make you forget that this tale was a tragic one. Coupled with this, there is a level of detachment up to this point between the Doctor you play as normally and the pre-amnesia Doctor. By showing the similarities between the two versions of the Doctor, Babel slowly bridges the gap between both versions of you, so much so that by the time you reach BB9, there is no doubt that we are the ones responsible for what is to come. The last of the heart rate flutters into a destined outcome, and rather than telling the story through a cutscene, Babel forces you into a stage where your direct input as a player leads to the death of Teresa. To progress through the story, you must comply, and though for a second it seems like things were looking bright for Babel, it is by your hand that it falls into ruin. The description of BB9 shows us Teresa's remorse for having to pass on her burdens to Amia, someone far too young to inherit them. Descriptions of the assassins, likewise, help to build a picture of how difficult of a betrayal this was even to the opposing side of the Civil War, and bolster the concept of fate directly. Lastly, the description of Teresa reinforces the aspect of fated death. A humble hero, a radiant dream. The future converges in her gaze, while the path fades beneath her steps. All of these build a clearer picture of the conflict to the player, build on the characters, and by extension, make a worthy event feel that much more palatable. The stage and story node that follows are no less depressing. The heart no longer beats, and slowly we watch as Teresa's life slips away, though not before one final act of kindness for the Doctor whom she still chooses to trust in the end. We're given a brief interaction and monologue, yet just as death happens in a flash, Teresa's words are suddenly cut off where her heart rate flatlines. Thrust out of the story and given no proper closure or farewell, Babel's melancholic music plays for a final time. As mentioned earlier, Babel is an event that focuses on fate and by extension, the effects of the past on the present and future. To the Sarkaz, the past defines who they are. The displacement of their people are the hands of other Terran nations, and the countless amount of times that their nation has been destroyed gives them a cause to unite behind, yet also keeps them trapped within a cycle of hatred, a cycle that always results in them coming out worse from it. You the Past, Ward Me Firmly, showcases the cyclical nature, with the layout of its levels completing a loop. Noteworthy is the background, which consists of the Soul Furnace, something important to Sarkaz's culture, yet also something shrouded in traditions of the past. Though it is viewed as an honor for the dead to be burned there, we know from chapter 14 that the souls that end up within the Soul Furnace suffer anguish and rage that can't be quelled. The setup of the levels showcases the journey of most Sarkaz, with the endpoint being that within the Soul Furnace. The description of BBEX2 reads, Sarkaz will render judgment of war. We are strong. BBEX3 reads, from betrayal, vengeance, from destruction, rebirth. And BBEX4 reads, violence is the only answer to hatred. Throughout this path, the cycle of violence is repeated with every stage you progress through, and ultimately the loop formed is the reason Teresa's and his followers remain trapped within the glass box. Only as you reach the soul furnace, and therefore the end of the cycle, the descriptions shift to a desire for something more. The king shows her compassion for her people, even if they were her enemies, whilst the silent call for love is mentioned in the stage prior. Nevertheless, this being the endpoint, it is far too late to turn back at this point of the journey. Hatred for the past and fear of the future breed an environment where the same mistakes will continue to be made, unless something can be done to change. Yet only in death does this become apparent. If the first set of stages explore the idea of fate, the last set of stages within the event instead focus on how to break free from it. You the Constant UR-Means layout is presented in the form of shattered pieces of glass, much like the one you see in the main menu of Babel. They are detached, unbound by the chains of fate, and free from the prison of the past. The medals you receive throughout the event hint at the Doctor learning about the past and coming to terms with it. Thereby, this set of stages represent the prison that the Doctor was freed from in Teresa's final moments. With his past no longer tying him down, he can carry part of her dream to create a better future for Terra. Much the same, Teresa's death, even if destined, allows Rhode Island to become something it never could when she was still alive. The glass shattering, therefore, is not only symbolism for her inevitable death, but also the hole she leaves behind. Though gone, the people most dear to her are no longer held within the glass cage of the past. It is no surprise then that the last stage of the event you clear awards you a medal titled Imprisonment in Freedom. This medal, like many others, reaffirms and guides the player to an answer, yet it also bestows upon them a shred of hope. We committed a terrible act, yet even through it all, Teresa entrusted the future to us, believing that unburdened by our past, we can make the correct choices moving forward. There's a lot that can be learned from the design of Babel, yet for the sake of trying to keep the video concise, and well, for my own sanity, I did not fit it all in. These are also just my takeaways and thoughts on the matter, though I am curious to know how your experience of Babel might have differed from my own, or whether you agree with any of the points I made in this video. And whilst not necessary, if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you shared it with friends. I had a lot of fun making my first video essay, and so I don't expect it to be perfect, but support is always welcome. Moreover, if you like this kind of content, make sure to check out the visual design of Arknights Lone Trail by Half a Cup of Rice, who I think made a much better video than my own. And for Arknights' most hated YouTuber that claimed Guide Ahead was an event where nothing happens, please consider the message of its story being that making change of that scale is a gradual and difficult process that does not happen overnight. No hate towards Super, of course, I love your content. And if you've stuck around this long, thank you for watching.